Hi again. All right, so today we're going to do some more greatest common factor, but today we're going to use prime factors instead of listing all the factors out. Okay, I think you're going to like this method a lot. So make sure that you have your paper and you're following along with me. So there are three main steps that I want you to follow whenever you're finding the greatest common factor using prime factors. Remember, prime factors means that we're going to be making factor trees. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here so I have a little more space. And our very first step says to find the prime factorization for each number. So I am going to make a factor tree for 36. Do this along with me. Okay, so 36, I'm going to break it down into 6 and 6, and then neither of those are prime, so I'll have to factor it down again to 2 times 3. 2 is a prime number, 3 is a prime number, and I'll do the same thing to my other 6. Okay, so that's 36. Now I'm going to do 54. Hey, notice I'm rewriting the numbers and I'm not trying to make a factor tree off these tiny little typed numbers. Okay, please make sure that you just rewrite them so we're not squeezing it into a very just tiny small space. Trust me, it'll make it better. All right, anyways, back to my factor tree, 54. So I'm going to say 9 times 6. Neither are prime, so I'm going to break this down into 3 times 3. 3 is a prime number, so I'll circle it. 6 can be 2 times 3, so I'll circle those because they're prime. Okay, if I'm going too fast, pause the video, catch up, and then hit play again. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out here again. Let's see step 2. So we made our factor trees. Now I'm going to write the prime factorization. So for 36, I have 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. And for 54, I have 2 times 3 times 3 times 3. So remember how I mentioned in the other video that when you write the prime factorization, it's helpful if you write the numbers from least to greatest. This is a good example of why we want to do that. It's going to help us find the greatest common factor. Okay, so we made our factor trees, and now I stacked my prime factors on top of each other so I can circle the factors that they have in common. Okay, so I can see the top row is representing the number 36. The bottom row represents the number 54. So I need to have the factor in each row in order for it to be in common. Okay, I can see they each have 2 as a factor, and they each have 3 as a factor, and they each have a second 3 as a factor. So notice the numbers don't have to be stacked up perfectly on top of each other, but you just have to make sure you have one factor from each number, and you can't use a factor more than once. Okay, so I couldn't circle one of those numbers a second time. All right, so they have a 2, a 3, and a 3 in common. Now I'm going to multiply the common factors. However many circles you have, that's how many common factors there are. That's how many numbers you should multiply. Okay, so my greatest common factor is going to be 2 times 3 times 3, which is 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. So I'm saying my greatest common factor is 18. Okay? Now, check to see, does that make sense? Is 18 a factor of 36? Yeah, it is. And is 18 a factor of 54? Yes. So we know that our answer is correct. Okay? So let's kind of recap. Our first step, we found the prime factorization for each number, made factor trees. Second step, we stacked the prime factors on top of each other so we could circle what they have in common. And then step number 3, multiply the common factors to get your greatest common factor. All right, go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try the next one. Find the greatest common factor of 48 and 40. And then you can hit play, check your answer. All right, when you're finished, turn your paper over to the back side. I have just a couple more things I want to go over. All right, so real quick here, boys and girls, let's talk about a couple more things with greatest common factor. So in the first box, if we want to get the greatest common factor of 12, 20, and 24 using prime factors, so now I have 3 numbers, you're going to follow the same process. You need to make a factor tree for each of those 3 numbers to get your prime factors. Okay, now I already did that, so I could show you this example a little bit quicker. So I have my prime factors listed here. Now, just like before, we have to see what factors they have in common. This time, though, it has to be a factor of all 3 numbers, not just 2 of them, but all 3. So you see how they all have a 2, they all have a second 2 in common, and that's it. There's a 3 in 12 and a 3 in 24, but 20 doesn't have 3 as a factor, so we can't use that as a common factor. So for this one, the greatest common factor is going to be 2 times 2, which equals 4. And then again, go back and double check. Is 4 a factor of 12? Yes. Is 4 a factor of 20? Yes. And is 4 a factor of 24? It sure is. So we know that we're correct. Okay? All right, move on to this next box here. Greatest common factor of 21 and 25. So 21, the prime factors would just be 3 times 7. Okay, for 25, the prime factors are 5 times 5. So they don't have any factors in common. That means their greatest common factor is 1. Remember, every number has 1 as a factor, so if they don't have anything else in common, we go back to 1. Okay, last example I want to do here, greatest common factor of 35 and 25. So 35 would be 5 times 7, and 25 is going to be 5 times 5. Okay, again, I'm going to pause here. Typically, you guys are going to make a factor tree for each of the numbers and then stack the prime factors up. Okay, I'm skipping the factor tree part just so I can show you a couple examples here. Okay, but you will make a factor tree every time you find the greatest common factor. All right, back to our work here. So here in our prime factors, I see they have a 5 in common, and that's all. Okay, so the greatest common factor of 25 and 35 is equal to 5. You don't need to multiply 5 times 5, okay, because never have we multiplied the numbers inside the circle. We multiply the numbers from each circle, okay? So 5 is the common factor between 35 and 25. Okie doke, you guys are ready to go practice this on your own. Let me know if you have any questions.